think we're good.
Hi. Welcome to How to Talk to 2-Year-Olds About Child Abuse Prevention. I'm excited to see so many of you on the call. My whole screen is full of black boxes, which I kind of hate. So I look forward to meeting you all next August at an in-person conference, and we will do this all over again. But thank you for being here today. I need to get a little bit of background about how I got here. You may be wondering, where people, when they're out doing their dishes one night, does a thought come to them and they say, hey, I want to talk to 2-year-olds about child abuse prevention. This is a great idea. Let's get started right away. That didn't happen to me. That was not, my path was a little less enthusiastic. My name is Julie Federico. I was a middle school counselor for years. And the kids that I worked with were 11 to 14-year-olds. They were always recounting to me stories of abuse that happened to them from where they were the ages of 0 to 8 years old. So they were 11 to 14 and they were still knee deep in this trauma. They had not dealt with it. Most of them had not told anyone, and they were doing risk-taking behaviors to try to numb some of the pain that they were feeling. One morning I was sitting at my house. This is in the fall of 2007. And I said, hey, is no one talking to the little people? And I wrote a book for really young kids. Like I said, I worked with middle schoolers. I wrote a book called Some Parts Are Not for Sharing for 0 to 8-year-olds. And I have to say that the words were inspired by God. I sat down with a piece of paper, and this is a true story. This is not, I'm not inflaming this for posterity or anything. My first draft was my last draft. The first publisher I sent it to picked up my book and published it. So that really never happens in the publishing world. They didn't publish my book because I'm such a great author. I'm not. What they saw was a niche market. They saw a niche market and they saw dollar signs. Not too many people are talking to 2-year-olds about child abuse prevention, but I wanted to. I wanted to because I could not help my kids at school. The trauma with them was past, and we were doing remediation and cleanup work, which is no fun. I wanted to back up to prevention. So I started to talk to really young kids about it. My book came out in 2009, and I've been on this prevention journey ever since. And this does not feel like work to me. This is kind of a life job that I have that I really enjoy. I am saving kids from child abuse one book at a time, and it's very rewarding and very fun. I gave this presentation in April at the Darkness into Light conference. It was very well received. People were like, oh, we do need to talk about this. And then I saw the option for working for Prevent Child Abuse America, and I joined up, and they took on this seminar. But I first have to say, I think I need to pause for a minute and say, I wish we lived in a world where I didn't have to give this presentation and you were not hearing about how to protect 2-year-olds from child abuse. It's kind of absurd that we live in that world. And I'm sorry that we do, but we do. So therefore, what do? Well, you get on board with this. Like, you are all here to get on board. So you are doing the right thing by being here. The first example I want to give, if you can't remember anything else about this presentation, is my Twitter example of how to talk to kids, babies, about child abuse prevention. And this is my Thanksgiving dinner example. And it's very visual. So here we go. So at Thanksgiving, you have your green bean casserole. You have your turkey, your pumpkin pie, your stuffing, your dessert, and dinner rolls. That's 6 items that are on your Thanksgiving table, most likely. When I talk to kids about child abuse prevention, I'm talking young kids, 2 years old to around 3 years old. I am only talking about the dinner roll. That's all I'm talking about. I'm talking about kind of the tip of the iceberg. I get a lot of bad reviews on Amazon for my book. They're like, this lady's worthless. She's kind of a piece of crap. She didn't say anything. That's the point. My book does not really say anything. It just says, if someone's harming you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, tell a trusted adult. So that's the tip of the iceberg. When you're talking to 2-year-olds about child abuse, we're only talking about the dinner roll. And I'll kind of reemphasize this again later in my talk when I start talking to things. Many people try to discuss all the food items with 2-year-olds, and this is where they get tripped up, and this is when they stop. If you were only talking about one item, which is the dinner roll, and basically the translation of the dinner roll is your body is your own. If someone's harming you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, tell a trusted adult. That's the caveat with younger kids. That is your mission statement. That is your focus. That's all you're trying to do. You're giving them seeds. Talking about child abuse is you plant seeds. So kids at a young age, this is all they need to know. In time, your message will build. But for now, the basics, this is enough information to keep them safe. So just think small doses. That's probably the most important thing I have to say. This is not the whole ball of wax. This is the dinner roll, and it works. And kids get this. Children will understand this message at a much younger age than most people think. I have a real life example. My daughter was 18 months old when I got a paper copy of my book, Some Parts Are Not for Sharing, and I immediately read it to her. A few months later, we were carving pumpkins, and she says to me, "Mom, do pumpkins have private parts?" And I was like, aha, I am on to something here. I got it. So I have to say she was not a gifted kid. She was not reading it too. She's not a genius. She's a regular kid, just like the kids you work with at your centers. But she got it and she understood it. Child abuse is really all about access. And I say this even though it makes complete sense. The only people who can abuse your children are the people who have access to them. And I say that because I want you to talk about this if you get the opportunity with your parents, with your families. Parents need to inventory and think about everybody who has access to their children. I think they should even make a list. If you can train parents to think in this way, it will help prevent child abuse. If kids have a lens of who has access to my kid, and they're doing a mental inventory of everyone they know, that will just heighten their radar. If no one has access to your kids, they cannot abuse them. And this is my visual that I talk when I use, and I know you can't really see it, when I do presentations. Basically, I'll tell you what it is. One side is a guy from America's Most Wanted that I picked off the internet. This other kid, he works for the PTA. He's like a 12-year-old happy-go-lucky kid. And I know you all are trained professionals, so you're going to know the answer to this, but I hold up this sheet and I said, who's more likely to abuse your child? Everyone says the guy from America's Most Wanted. About very few people will say that shiny, smiley little kid. And I say he is more likely to abuse your child. And people are like, oh, no, that's completely wrong. It goes, who has access to your child? Are you going to give your 2-year-old set of twins, have a guy from America's Most Wanted come over and babysit your kids? Never. The child that's 12, the smiley kid, has access to your children. 12-year-olds are very precocious. They're learning about sexuality, and they frequently will offend on younger kids. And that's just something to bring to your parents' awareness. I know you guys know all of this. I'm preaching to the choir here. Actual language to discuss body safety with toddlers. And I was going to try to make a video where you could just play this for your parents, but I did not get that done today. I just started a new job and it's been a crazy week. When you're talking to kids, and if you get the opportunity at your agency to have a room full of toddlers, this was about 10 years ago. Hartford, Connecticut Head Starts in Child Abuse Awareness Month read my book in all of their 150 preschool classrooms. So I got to read this book to 3-year-olds, and they understood it. They understood what I was saying. Keep your language short, keep it simple and sweet. This will go a long way. Use a direct language. And I'm just going to read you an example if you are struggling with a language here. Hi, children. Today I'm going to talk to you about body safety. What is body safety? Body safety is a tool to keep you safe from unwanted touch. Body safety rules. Number 1, your body is your own. Number 2, if someone touches you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, say no. Or say to them, I've been trained in body safety and this is not okay. Number 3, if you do feel unsafe, tell a parent or trusted adult. You always have the right to be safe. And again, that's really small, but it goes a long way to talking to kids. Some tips and tricks of the trade to make this conversation go smoothly. Many adults that I talk to, and I talk to a lot, have a real stumbling block with this issue, and they have a stumbling block with it, so they say nothing. Saying nothing is probably the worst thing that you can do. If you say nothing, if your child is harmed, they will say nothing. Many people say nothing because they were abused as a child and they never told anyone. So talking about this topic creates a lot of PTSD and a lot of anxiety and just a lot of craziness in their own mind. That is a whole nother training on how to get past that, to be able to talk to kids. If you cannot give this talk to kids unless you can compartmentalize your own childhood trauma from what you're saying today, if that makes sense. What happened to you back then is not what you're talking about with this little group of kids. You will most likely be talking to kids who have never been harmed. These two topics do not mix with your prevention message at all. And if you cannot untangle these two topics, do not take this on at your agency and say, oh, I think I want to talk to 2-year-olds about child abuse. Don't do it. Pass it off to someone else. The counselors and social workers are always taking on so much responsibility. They're always saying, we can do this, I can do this, I'm strong, I'm trained. Don't do it. Pass it to someone else. If you can't find anyone else, email me and I will make you a video clip that you could play to families. It just doesn't mix and it gets very confusing, and I think it's very traumatizing for the person presenting. Too many counselors say, I can do this. This is something that you can opt out, and you have my permission to opt out and do it and take care of yourself. Points that trip people up. These are points that trip up parents. And this conversation sometimes gets tangled up with sex. I'm talking about body safety here, but sometimes people will cross it over. Body safety is not sex. 2-year-olds are not interested in sex. Children need to know that they have a space allowance with people and they can challenge someone if someone is challenging their space. Another point that hinders some parents is they tell the whole story. Remember back to the dinner roll example. You are only communicating to children that if someone touches them in a way that makes them feel unsafe, they're going to tell a trusted adult. You're not talking about consent, sex, sexual harassment, sharing naked photos online, human trafficking, or any other adult topic. All of those topics maybe hover around this, but that's not what we're talking about. We're teaching kids that they matter, their feelings matter, and their bodies matter. Parents absolutely want to be the first ones to have this conversation with their children before the perpetrator can get to them. When I first started doing this work, the average age that kids were approached was 5 years old. One day I was giving a presentation. This lady comes up to me afterwards and she goes, Julie, you're wrong. The age now that children are most likely being harmed is 4. I was mortified, but I said, thank you. And that was years ago. I bet it's moved down, but I did not want to Google it. So if the average age that kids are first approached by a perpetrator is 4 years old, you have 2 years they're verbal, 2 years they're nonverbal. I think nonverbal kids can understand this information. They might not be able to articulate back to you what they're hearing, but your words are resonating with what they already know. Kids are built with a the built-in safety guard. I think everybody has that. They know it's wrong for someone to touch them in an inappropriate way. It's only after spending time with the perpetrator and hearing their lies that they might not believe that that's true. If you are speaking to kids who have not been harmed, this conversation will not be a hard sell. And it's not a hard sell because they know it intuitively. And the message is so simple. How could you not get it? Kids have an intuitive sense, like I said, about people touching them. And this is something I say to parents, and this is something you can use with your parents, not for social workers, because I know you all know this. Many times when grandparents come and they have a 6-month-old baby, the grandma walks in and she immediately wants to hold the baby. The baby starts protesting, crying, screaming. and the parents will push the baby into grandma's arms. If you have a 6-month-old and they're protesting, say to the grandma, she will snuggle with you in about an hour. But right now she's saying no, and I'm teaching her to respect boundaries. Boundaries start very young. And some parents teach their kid at a very young age that their boundaries are not important. You putting your 6-month-old in the arms of grandma who's protesting is not respecting their boundary. And that's just something I like to share to parents. And parents always say, oh, I never thought of that. I thought they wouldn't care. They're so young. They know. I think they know. And you're starting to just set the precedence of it's okay to do something that doesn't feel right for my body. You want kids to listen to their body because their bodies have the answers to this. So you want them to be in tune with their bodies. Like I said, it's not going to be a hard sell when you talk to kids. They will understand everything that you're saying. And as I said, as they get older, their conversations will change, and this conversation will be ineffective with an 11-year-old or a 9-year-old. So this is a short window, say like 0 to 8. After that, they need more information. Spend some time talking with kids about what a trusted adult is. And I give examples: an auntie, a grandma, a stepmom, a teacher, a Girl Scout leader, a Sunday school teacher. And I list those for kids so they know who trusted adults are. Anyone who works at a public school or charter school or private school is a mandatory reporter. Anyone who works in education, that's anyone from the custodian to the principal. All of those are mandatory reporters. Ideally, a trusted adult is someone that a kid has a connection with. And this, I mentioned this, but this is a higher level conversation for older kids. If you tell someone and they don't believe you, which does happen, you need to tell someone else. And I don't know if you want to start that conversation because it may make them feel hopeless, but I would just say to them, sometimes you tell someone and they can't hear you, they won't hear you, and just go to another person. You may have to tell 3 people before someone listens to you and decides to act and get you help. Keep talking until someone listens to you. Eventually, you will find someone that will be listening to you and will be looking out for you. I think the main reason that a lot of people don't want to do this is because they try to talk about the whole topic. I wrote a poll, and if you have time while I'm talking, and we will talk about this later, write in the poll. And the poll is, what hesitates you? What hesitations do you have about talking to 2-year-olds about child abuse prevention? And that can be anything. I don't think there's enough training on this. So you may say, I've never been trained. And I'm sorry, I'm not everywhere, but I hope that more people come on board with me and this becomes a community thing. I want this to be the last generation of kids who don't know what to do if someone touches them inappropriately. And this is all about knowledge. North America is a little behind the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has done a huge outreach on this topic. They had billboards. This message was on buses. It was on public service announcements. It was given out at school. I think they printed bookmarks. Their message was called The Swimsuit Lesson. And it was interesting because their message mirrored my book. Even though I had never spoken to them, we were speaking the same language. And they bought a ton and just gave them out to kids. But they were doing it as a public service announcement. I would like to move child abuse prevention to a public health issue, not a child abuse issue, because people get all hung up on child abuse. When you ride a bike, you wear a helmet. If you're in the car, you wear a seatbelt. If someone touches you inappropriately, you tell a trusted adult. I want that to be a public health issue. So every time I talk, I say, if any of your family works for PBS, please email me. I love to be on PBS. I think you start there and then move out to cable and the other networks. I would like kids to be saturated with this information. And when I mean saturated, that the community agencies, schools are getting to kids before the perpetrator gets to them. And like I said before, that age is around now 3.5 or 4 years old. So that's not a ton of time. And that's only 2 years that they're verbal. So there is a lot of work to be done, but I believe it can be done. with the way the internet works right now and social media, the movement of that, the messages that you can send to children are vast. And it was great when the United Kingdom picked it up from a government standpoint of view and put it on buses and just put it everywhere. Their, like I said, their message was called the swimsuit lesson. And one of the attachments I sent, it was an age progression order of books, which is, I think, important. So I'm talking about younger kids. So on that Google Doc, my book was the first one. The second one that's really good for kids is I Said No by Kimberly King. And you'll see that on there. She is around, I would say, 7 years old to maybe 10. After 10 years old, you need a book called The Swimsuit Lesson. And this was written by a former school resource officer and Fort Collins police officer. And it's good. It's more in depth, and it is for older kids. But those 3 age progression books will help you at your agency if you're working with older kids. My stuff is just the tip of the iceberg. I chose not to talk about everything with kids. I wanted to talk about something rather than nothing. And I didn't want to talk about everything because I knew the kids wouldn't understand that. It just doesn't work with a 3-year-old to throw this whole hornet's nest of information and sexuality at them. That's just way over their head. But they do understand this. They do understand it because my daughter understood it. All those kids in Hartford, Connecticut that were 3 years old understood it. So I know kids can understand this information. I think the hesitancy comes with some adults. And we're working on that. And I will keep doing this in other venues, in other places. And one day I hope to be on PBS doing this nationwide because kids understand this. And if we can get kids communicating to school personnel, trusted adults, if I used to do in-person presentations, I haven't for a while, I'd like to build a house of cards. And I would have done this if we were in person. So that you have this huge house of cards. Child abuse is built on silence, and child abuse is very scary. It's very scary to talk about. It's very scary to think about it, and it can be very scary to talk about and just embrace. You take one card out of that house of cards, you take out silence, whole house crumbles. It just falls in a second. There's no resistance. Poof. Child abuse is built on silence. If I can get people to start talking, we can erase that silence. If I can move into public health with this issue, I will just be completely golden, as they say. But right now, we are kind of in social services, child advocacy centers, and different agencies dealing with child abuse. I would like for you guys to think about partnering with your public health office in your local city, because that would be a step in the right direction. But silence is what this is built on. So I want kids to be talking. Like I said, a lot of parents don't say anything, either from their own trauma or they don't know what to say. The other mistake parents make is they wait until the kid starts to do sleepovers around 8 or 9, and then they have this big talk with them before the sleepover. That's way too late. So that's about 4 years between 4 and 8. That's too long. 8 is not the time to have this conversation. Sleepovers is not the time to have this conversation. And this is something I like to recommend that parents do with babysitters. When parents hire a babysitter, the first thing they should say to them is, my kids have been trained in Julie Federico's body safety. My kids know what to do if someone touches them inappropriately. I think, and I have no data or research to back this up with, I think if you're a babysitter that had planned on molesting those kids, you're just going to go somewhere else. And I could be wrong because I've never researched this, but I think all parents, anyone who hires a babysitter should say, our kids are trained in body safety. They passed the class, they got a certificate, we're good to go. So they will be reporting to me any unusual body touches or hugs or unwanted physical touch. I think that goes a long way to deter perpetrators. So when I say babysitters, I want to widen that net to family members. Most kids are harmed by someone they know. And in the media, we are not led to believe that. 1 out of 10 kids, if they are raped, did not know their perpetrator. 1 out of 10. So that means 90% of kids are raped, know their perpetrator. That means the parents probably introduced them to the perpetrator, which is heartbreaking. So I say you have this conversation with your babysitters, but also your family. Most people who are harmed by stepfathers, uncles, brothers, cousins, brother's best friend, cousin's best friend, anyone kind of in your circle of family you need to think about. And it's harder to talk to someone and say, my dad is molesting me. That is a really hard conversation to have. But I think if you open the door and you're the one that initiates this conversation with kids, they will come and they will talk to you. So partly what we're doing by this is just opening the door a little bit and saying, kids, come and talk to me, and then giving them a few body safety tips. They understand this, and we need this to be a public health issue. It is definitely a public health issue. And I can tell you from personal experience, prevention is so much more fun than remediation. I did remediation for years, it just did not energize me. This energizes me. You will see me when you're in a nursing home, because I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. I want to save every child. I can't, I work alone. So, but I think with the use of some social media tools and just having other people get the word out, this will start to spread. We have come a long way. And when you think of the history of America and where we were in the 1950s and 60s, we have come a long, long way. So I am very hopeful that we as a society can take on this tiny information that I'm presenting and start sharing it with kids. Interestingly, when you talk to kids about this, they don't have the hangups that adults do. And in a way, it's very refreshing. When you talk to a group of 3 and 4-year-olds about this, they just don't have the adult issues that you have when you get older, because most 3 and 4-year-olds have not really been harmed. So I meet so many people at book signings, and these ladies come up to me and they're about 10 years older than me, and they're crying. And they said, where were you when I was little? And I just almost start crying with them. And I'm like, I wasn't born yet. And they said, no one told me this. I was abused by such and who and such and who. So I've been a counselor for about 25 years. No one has ever told me they were abused by someone who was not a family member. Not one. Not any at the book signings. Not any at my school. Not any friends. It's 1 out of 10. So think of that 90% of kids with their families, and the pandemic has done an explosion on this child abuse thing, I think. I think a lot of kids were harmed. Now that we're starting to near the end, I think they will start talking. And you all are now officially trained in 2-year-old body safety. And I have just talked for half an hour. And as I was talking, I know some people were like, yeah, but. So if you would like to unmute and ask a question, you are more than welcome to. Or if I have a lady helping me who's reading the chat. So if you want to type it into the chat, you can do that as well. So I will pause here for a second.
And Julie, I have some information from the poll. It seems like the biggest hesitations are around language, having the right language or using what words to use. Some commented that they felt like they weren't trained to do it or didn't have the knowledge to do it. And some commented they were kind of afraid of the questions that would come back that they weren't prepared to answer, as well as making sure they're saying something that the parents aren't going to disagree with or have problems with the way they're saying it. So those were the main themes from the poll, if you want to address any of those.
I think most people haven't been trained in this because there's not a lot of trainings out there. Like I said, I've been in counseling for years and I never went to one. So yes, you probably haven't been trained because no one's really doing this except me. But it doesn't take a lot of training. I think you get together with your agency and you say, what are we all on the same page about? Your body is your own. I know you agree on that. Tell a trusted adult. I know you agree on that. You matter, you're important. So I don't think you guys are going to have disagreements around that. I think parents get scared when they start talking about this because they get that fear, that primal fear of, I want to protect my child. And they want to protect them so fiercely that they completely dodge this. And you're putting your kid at risk when you do this. So you said people weren't trained and they didn't have the language.
Right.
Right.
And I think your comment about the role, just talking about the role, not getting into language that really isn't going to apply for this particular age is really helpful for that. But go ahead.
I put my email in the chat, but I did it before you all logged on. So I know sometimes the chat doesn't tell me if it's still there. It says juliefederico@gmail.
It is in the Zoom chat, but it's
Okay.
not in the platform chat. I can type it in there.
Okay. If you want me to do a 5-minute talk to your kids, I'll do one for the parents and the kids. I do think if your parents are adamantly opposed to talking about this, I wouldn't fight that battle. I and I don't know how polite I would be with them, but I would look at them and say, your child is at risk if you don't talk about this, but I respect your decision. You are the parent. I know that this is probably the last generation of parents who don't want to talk about it. I work with teenagers, and my God, they talk about everything. Inappropriate, not appropriate, political, racial, religion. There's nothing off table with, I'm talking 14 to 18-year-olds right now. Those are the kids I work with. So when they are 32 to 38 and having kids, what the resistance you're getting from parents right now, that is going to be short term. I think that is on its way out with this millennial generation because they talk about everything. And in a way, I think that's great because, again, this is all built on silence. If you want me to send you some clip of something, I really hate being on video, but I'll do it. I'll do it because I know it's awkward and you all are professionals and you want to be trained in everything before you jump off a cliff. And that makes a lot of sense. It's just hard to find. I think if you dig deep enough on the internet, you could probably find more trainings around this. But it is hard to find training. And I know most of you haven't been trained. You were brave enough to come and get trained today. You're probably amazed at how easy this training was. You're like, oh, that's great. But you can only talk about one or two things with 2-year-olds. You don't talk about everything. And if you can remember that, you will be very successful.
There is a question about where we can refer parents to for this training. So I guess that would be your book.
This training that I'm doing right now is going to be recorded. So you could share parents today. You could share this whole thing with parents today. And I do say to parents when they say, I don't know what to say to my kid, I do say to them, you can just read my book to your kid and that's all you have to say. And they're like, is it really that easy? And I'm like, yes, it is that easy for a 2-year-old. Yeah. Because the book does not talk about everything. The book is the tip of the iceberg. I put into that file room the ebook of Some Parts Are Not for Sharing. I loaded the English and the Spanish one. You have my permission to reproduce the hell out of that. I don't care who you send it to. If you want to put it on your website, send it to parents, send it to your public health office, who I'd love to connect with. But it is as simple as reading that book. Conversations will change as your kids get older. So parents have to be ready for that. This is not going to be your end-all book. That's why I put the one document with the 3 books in it. That will carry you to about 13, I think, with all 3 of those. It would be nice if you could get all 3 of those at your agency and just let parents see them and kind of get a handle on them.
Another question we have is where you can find research that backs up. Do you have references to research regarding this information?
No, I have not, because I don't think there has been research on this. I don't think it has been studied enough to have the data, if that makes sense. There has been a lot of research on does talking to kids about child abuse prevention help. I think that is easily researchable, if that makes sense. Statistics can show you that it does help to talk to kids about this topic. Specifically about 2-year-olds, I don't know if you would find any data on that specifically. I know it works just because I've done it in real time, if that makes sense. But I have not spent a lot of time. I'm not really a data person. I am getting this book out to as many families, kids, school teachers, churches as I can. And the book just kind of does its own thing. It is kind of magical in a way that it is protecting kids. Just, I tell people I'm ending child abuse one book at a time, and that's what I'm doing. And it's a lot of fun.
We are having, people are saying they're having some trouble downloading the Spanish version of the book. Can they just email you? I have put your email address in here. Will that help?
You
Or,
can,
okay.
yeah, you can email me and I could give you the Spanish ebook.
And the name of the book again is,
Well, some parts are not for sharing.
okay,
So
that's the name of the book.
yeah, and then the Spanish translation is Algunas Partes No So, something like that. So, but if you email me, I would be glad to send you the book as a thank you for coming and learning more about this. This is so important. I mean, it really is so easy, but I think we as adults, we make it more complex than what it is. Take your cues from your
Mhm.
kids. They're not going to be scared to talk about this. They're not going to have hangups talking about it. And they will understand everything you say. I know that they will, even though I have no data to tell you that they will. I know from my own personal experience that they understand this and they want to be safe and they want to be protected.
We also have a question if you have any recommendations for the type of therapy that might be helpful for a child under the age of 5.
That has been abused.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of play therapy. I'm also starting to research and learn a little bit more about music therapy. 5-year-olds don't really sit down and talk too much. I think finding a good play therapist would be key.
Mhm.
And talking with them, and I would be completely honest with them. And I would tell them, because you have been harmed once, your chances of being harmed a second time go up. And I don't say that to scare you, because I don't want to scare you. I'm your therapist. I say that so you can be aware. Knowledge is power. And if you tell a kid that, that puts his radar up a little bit more. But I think working with a good play therapist can do wonders for kids.
Okay. I have a question about when your culture doesn't really allow you to use the proper name of body parts. Is there another way to kind of have this conversation with a child?
Yeah. And that can be tricky. The whole time I talked, I never mentioned anatomically correct body parts. I and I don't use that in my talks. I just kind of opted out of all of that. And every person I know who works in my profession says, and I know what they say you need to use anatomically correct body parts. Everyone says that. I know that's what everyone does. So I'm blatantly kind of going the other direction. I wanted people to hear my message. I didn't want them to get hung up on the word vagina. I'm like, that word cripples people. And when you say that to people, they can't hear anything else you say. And that's ridiculous. And I don't agree with it. And I think the people are right who say you need to use anatomically correct body parts. I don't disagree with them. I just don't do that. I don't do it because I'm talking to 2-year-olds. I don't want to offend the parents, so they walk out. And I don't know how one word freaks people out so much, but it does. So I just dodged the whole thing. I'm like, going in another direction. If I don't do that right, somebody else will be there to use those words with you. But But I know there are so many cultures, and I live in Denver, and it's a melting pot of families with different values and different things. And many cultures, they would ask you to stop speaking if you used those words. And I just don't do it. I know you're supposed to,
Mhm.
but if you read the book, you will see that I don't use those words in the book. In the book, the kid is um, harmed and he goes and tells his teacher. That's basically the book in a nutshell. So I didn't use those words in the book. And I would never brush up against someone else's culture because I think that's insensitive to them. And I don't want to do that because that's just not what I do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's another question that's come up about just the Hispanic community. It's hard for some parents because this is a taboo topic. So how do you address this with those parents who are afraid of those conversations?
You know, I was in a Hispanic family for 12 years with my husband. So I saw it up close, and it's real, and it's downright scary. There's no other way to put it. You, I think, need to do it in secret and have a conversation with your child alone, with no uncle there, no cousin, no grandma. You and your child talking in their bedroom, I think, is the safest way to do it. Do not involve your family. Do not tell your family you came to Julie Federico's Child Abuse Prevention Association program. They'd be mortified. That is an uphill battle that I would not be prepared to fight. Those systems have been in place so long. What that culture thinks of women and how they treat women is very different. I, I'm not going to win that battle. And I'm not going to start to talk about that with the whole Hispanic family. I think kids one-on-one can understand this information. You can read the book to the kid, and that is how you protect them. If you involve all your family members and ask if you should do this with your kid, they'll say no. But that makes kids really vulnerable, especially because Hispanic families have so many large gatherings. And at a large family reunion gathering, your kids are very at risk because parents' radars are kind of off. They're like, we're with family. Everything is good. We're all here having a wonderful carne asada in the backyard. So your radar is off. But kids are very at risk when they are unsupervised and they are around so many other adults. Remember what I said, 90% of kids who are harmed by family members. So I'm not saying to leave your kid at Walmart alone, but your radar needs to be up when you're at these large family gatherings. And I think the way you kind of combat this is just piece by piece. Maybe you don't talk about the whole dinner roll. Maybe you cut that dinner roll in half with the Hispanic families. I don't know. That is a hard question to answer, but really this is between you and your child. You as a parent have a right to protect your child no matter what culture you're from, because every parent everywhere in the whole world wants their child protected from every culture. So I know that will ring true with you and with your family. So if you keep using that guiding thing, this issue is worldwide. So these conversations are happening in and about every culture, but it is challenging. I do know that from personal experience. And if you would like to talk more about that, whoever asked that question, we can do that at a later time. I put probably 6 attachments into that
Files.
the files, but now I can't remember what they all are. So just go through them. One is I offered a discount if anybody who's at this training. I'll sell books to you for $7 a book if you order $30 or more. I know that's one of them. The 2 ebooks are out there. The 3 body safety books in age order are out there. And I think I may have written something that you can put in your newsletter about how to talk to kids about this. I did this about a week ago, so my memory is not 100%, but just go through those files and look and pick up, reproduce them in any way that you want. With that ebook, there is no copyright on it. I am my own publisher, so I have rights to send that wherever I want, and I want to send it to you all. and to all your kids at your agencies. And so use it how you like.
Says, we have a question about what about helping children understand that childcare providers and teachers aren't automatically safe either?
Yeah. And I was getting ready to try to write something. I read a lot for the Denver Post here, and I was going to do like a welcome back to school body safety tip. Teachers are mandatory reporters. Teachers also sexually assault children. So it's an interesting situation. Teachers are not 100% safe. Cops are not 100% safe. Your stepdads are not 100% safe. No one is 100% safe. So I think when you talk teachers, you also lump everyone else in your family into that same conversation. I think you need to give kids permission to tell you that your next door neighbor harmed them, your spouse, your boyfriend, their cousin, their grandpa. I say you cast that net wide to everyone that you know. But going back to school and sending young kids off to school, that can be really scary. I tell you what, the best way to protect your kid is to boost their self-esteem. Perpetrators look for the kids with the lowest self-esteem in the classroom, and they can spot them in a minute. So you teach your kid to stand up tall, carry yourself well, you lift your head up, and build their self-confidence. Tell them how fabulous they are. The morning before they go to school, write 10 sticky notes and put it in their bathroom and say, you are wonderful because, and then write 10 different things on those notes. Because you give me hugs, because we spend time together, because you help me take out the trash, because you think of other people's needs, or whatever you want to write. Self-esteem is one of the best indicators to not be sexually assaulted in many ways. But that's not all. I mean, that's not foolproof 100% of the time, but it does help in a classroom. People who are perpetrators look for easy victims. They don't want someone that's a challenge because they don't have a lot of time to do all that. They want someone easy who's not going to speak. So if you just tell your child, I want to know if someone at school is harming you or touching you inappropriately. And I say anyone at school, because it doesn't have to be a teacher. There's a lot of paras that are working in schools. There's substitutes. So your kid will be meeting a lot of new people when they go back to school. So this is a great time to have this conversation with your kids. And while you're talking about teachers, throw in everyone else in your family. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's back to the data and the research. It doesn't lie. 90% of kids are raped by someone they know. And every time I say that, my arm goes cold. I still get shivers because as a parent, you really don't want to introduce your child to a perpetrator. I'm like, that's like the worst thing you can think of, but your radar has to be up for everyone. And I mean everyone. Like I used to talk to my kids, I said, even Santa, your priest, your pastor, people that you think are not capable of this, they are. And it's like good news, bad news. It's like bad news that they can do it. Good news that now you've widened your net to include everyone, because no one is, people have done this from every situation and every profession that you can imagine. So no one, I don't know what to say. No one is not above the law of not doing this, but they look for easy victims. Make your kid an uneasy victim. Say, you know, I've been trained in body safety. Kids can say that. Have them say it with an attitude, like my kids at school do. You know, they get this head shaking, finger pointing thing, but the perpetrators will look for easy targets. Don't make your kid an easy target. And they won't be if you tell them all of these things that we've been talking about. They will understand it and you will hear. I just have to say, if they tell you something that so-and-so harmed them, say anything except, oh, I've known them since third grade. They would never do that. That's the wrong thing to say. So say anything except that. When they start talking, you just listen to them. You listen to them, and I would get down on their eye level and make eye contact with them. And I would overwhelmingly thank them. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for telling me. Because if you don't have your kid as a lifeline and you don't have that information from them, they could be harmed several times and you wouldn't know. So that's what I am working on. A lot of kids are harmed once, and when they have this information, the abuse will stop. That is my goal. This long-term abuse that goes on for years and years and years could be stopped in a moment if there had been dialogue between the parent and the little kid. And
I
again,
don't,
I just have
go
to say,
ahead.
if you don't have words, just read the book. If you can't buy the book, go to the library and get it. I'm in all the public libraries. Or you also have the ebook with you, so you can pull that up on your reader. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I don't seem to have any other questions at this time.
Okay, well, you guys have been a wonderful audience. I could talk about this the rest of the day, but I won't. Remember your Thanksgiving rule, remember your dinner rule, and remember everything this talk is not. And it's not all of those things that I mentioned. This is, if someone touches you in a way that makes you feel inappropriate or uncomfortable, I want to know. And I want to know immediately. And you can always talk to me. You open that door up with your kids, they will respond back to you. The worst thing you can do is say nothing, because if you say nothing, they'll say nothing. And some kids endure awful, awful abuse from loved ones and family members for years. So when you give them permission to just talk and then you listen to what they're saying, amazing things can happen and kids can be completely protected. I think all babysitters, you should look them in the eye and say, my kids have been trained. All family members, you should say that to them. And parents, have your radar up at the Walmart, because the Walmart is not safe, but have it up at family reunions, at weddings, at Thanksgiving, at Christmas, at an 80th birthday party. All of those family gatherings where all these people have access to your kids are dangerous times for your kids. Just kind of keep an eye on them, and go check on them every once in a while and keep the lines of communication open with your kid. That will save them from so much harm. You guys have been a wonderful audience. If you have personal other questions, I'm juliefederico@gmail. You can find me there. Or my website's just www.juliefederico.com. But this is really easy stuff. And if you guys do this and have wonderful successes, please let me know, because I'll be doing this talk again and I would love to share your successes and say, this worked at such and such an agency. And if you run into stumbling blocks, let me know. I can problem solve with you and try to work through some of that. This is not 100% easy from systems that we already have in place in our country and in our schools. So we are bucking the system a little bit by talking to kids about this. And I do want to acknowledge it. I make it like it sounds like it's all fun and games. I think there is a, I don't want to say conspiracy theory, because that word now means so much different than it used to. But there was a theory of keep the kids in the dark. When I was young, no one talked about this. I was kept completely in the dark about this. And that was just the way it was. I don't know why. I don't know who set that up. But that was the way our country just ran. Things are different now and they're changing. And I don't think in 10 years, you're going to have the obstacles that you have now talking about this, because your parents are going to keep getting younger and younger. And they are a vocal group. So the obstacles you have now talking with this about parents, those will be vanishing as the years tick away, if that makes sense. I encourage you all to keep doing this work. And thank you for everything you do to keep kids safe.
Thank you so much, Julie.
Yes.
Thank you. I have put a link for a survey, but I understand the link is not working. It's the only link I've got. I've checked it several times. So you may also email me with any feedback regarding this session. And again, thank you, Julie, so much. My email is also there in the chat box. All right. Thank you, everyone. And everyone, go get those books.
Thank you.
Bye. And Julie, I hope that you'll get to see the comments. There's a lot of comments about how important the information is in the chat. So,
Oh.
and some responses about how, yeah, everyone agrees it should be also a public health issue. They strongly agreed with that. So,
See, I'm not seeing, I only see my comment. I'm not seeing those comments for some reason.
they're on the platform itself and not in the Zoom chat.
Oh,
Right.
okay. Yeah, I can get out and go back over to that, I
Okay.
think.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. And we're going to close it down now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for being at the conference too.